Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with a late, but not entirely late, news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, May 2nd, 2019. Uh, just a little housekeeping, no vid chat tomorrow. That'll be a week from tomorrow. And for those of you who've been thinking it's tomorrow, sorry, it's not tomorrow. But anyway, down to business. I don't know where to begin, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a little context for this article, because I think that, again, crawling out to the end of the twig here, I think we're being very carefully set up. The memes are being managed. Now, I don't know if you're aware of it. Over the past week or so, there have been a lot of very strange stories about space-related matters in out-of-the-way places, UFOs, asteroids, and so on and so forth. And I want you to keep that in mind for the context of this article. Then the second thing I want you to keep in mind is the affidavit of Dr. Carol Rosen that she swore out as part of Dr. Stephen Greer's disclosure book a few years ago. And in that affidavit, I simply call it the Rosen affidavit. Many other people in the alternative research field also call it the Rosen affidavit. And in that statement, Dr. Rosen maintained that when she worked for Dr. Werner von Braun at Fairchild Industries after Werner von Braun was resigned from NASA, that's a whole other story, folks. I get into it in a bit of speculation in some of my books. But anyway, Dr. von Braun told Dr. Rosen that the plan of the elite in order to weaponize space was, first they were going to say, well, we need space-based weapons to defend ourselves against the communists. Then it was going to be terrorism. Listen carefully. Then it was going to be nations of concern. Think of Little George the Shrub's axis of evil speech, okay? Then it was going to be asteroids. And then finally it was going to be extraterrestrials. So that's the plan. Those are the phases or stages of things that they're going to point at in order to say we need to put weapons in space. Okay? So that's the Rosen affidavit. Final thing I want you to keep in mind are two things. Actually, two things. Tomorrow I have a blog coming out. I want you to pay attention to it because it's about a patent that someone sent me that was taken out in 2017. And I read it and I was thoroughly and duly gobsmacked. All right? But I want you to read that carefully and put it into context of today's news and views. Then the final thing I want you to bear in mind in the context of this article is the hypothesis that's been argued in some places in the alternative research field, I being one of the people who have argued this idea. But it really began, as far as I can tell, with Dr. Webster Tarpley and his 9/11 research that established the fact that during 9/11 there was a pattern of drills that were being run, and the operations of 9/11 were being run concurrently with those drills. In other words, a real operation was being covered by drills in order to create confusion and allow the perpetrators to carry out a real operation. So in other words, real operations nested inside of drills. All right, bear that in mind. Now, this article came out on the 29th of April on Zero Hedge. It was shared on Zero Hedge. And it's a very short article titled NASA Prepares for Asteroid Apocalypse with Planetary Defense Simulation. And I want to read a few paragraphs from this, and I want you to pay careful attention to the language that it is written in. Quote, NASA is going to be using a simulation of an asteroid apocalypse in order to help the space agency prepare for the cataclysmic event. And they are taking it seriously, as disaster planners from FEMA will join NASA for a dress rehearsal of doomsday. International partners, including the European Space Agency, will also be a part of the simulation. In other words, folks, it's a global drill. The drill, very next sentence, the drill is said to be a tabletop exercise that will simulate just how a planetary asteroid emergency would play out in real time. Although an emergency on this scale has never happened, and that, folks, means a drill on this scale has never happened. And factors such as the location of impact will have a massive effect on the response to such a globally catastrophic event. According to the Metro UK, disaster planners from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Now, let's stop right there. Disaster planners. Note the ambiguity of the phrase. These are people who plan for what to do in case of a disaster, but they're also the people that plan the disaster themselves and run the drills. Okay, that's key. Disaster planners from the Federal Emergency Management Agency will join with NASA to hold a, quote, make-believe apocalypse, unquote, intended to, quote, inform involved players of important aspects of a possible disaster and identify issues for accomplishing a successful response, unquote. Now, notice the successful response is left undefined. The scenario will begin with the fictional premise that on March 26, astronomers discovered a near-Earth object, a comet or asteroid, which comes close to within 30 million miles of Earth, and one they consider potentially hazardous to Earth, NASA wrote. Now, I'm skipping all the way to the end of this article. Again, listen carefully. When unexpected space rocks do appear on our scopes, we only get, and this is NASA speaking, by the way, folks, sometimes we only get hours' notice of their existence before they streak past. While the chances of a catastrophic impact are exceedingly slim, we're nonetheless unprepared for surprise asteroid strikes. Now, notice the terminology is again ambiguous. We're unprepared because we may not see the accidental asteroid, or the words could be taken to mean somebody out there might lob them at us. Again, the phrasing is very ambiguous. And I suspect that if you are running drills like this, you are going to want to incorporate in your drill and in your planning the added problem of having people figure out, is this merely an accident or is this part of a pattern? Is there somebody out there lobbing these things at us? So continuing, while the chances of a catastrophic impact are exceedingly slim, we're nonetheless unprepared for surprise asteroid strikes, which is why NASA is continually working on plans to help improve our NEO, near Earth orbit, detection and mitigation capabilities. The first step in protecting our planet is knowing what's out there, says the European Space Agency's head of planetary defense, Rüdiger Jahn. Only then, with enough warning, can we take the steps needed to prevent an asteroid strike altogether, or to minimize the damage it does on the ground, unquote. So I'm going to put it to you, folks, that with the technologies that we're seeing emerging, with the context now that in the last, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks, we've seen a little uptick of space-related news. We've seen articles about an Oxford professor saying, well, the aliens are here and living among us. This is now at Oxford. 30 years ago, that fellow would have been laughed out of court. We're seeing the New York Times run articles about UFOs, alien visitations, and so on. We're seeing it even make Bloomberg, which, a friend of mine in the alternative research field said, well, what's it doing there? This is a finance page. So, in other words, it's appearing in major places now. And the asteroid defense business concerns me because I suspect the next stage now, if Dr. Rosen was correct, is we're going to start seeing that appear in major media outlets along with drills. And if they're willing to stage false flags like 9/11 and wrap them up in drills, then all they need to do for a similar type of planetary false flag is to create drills and carry on an operation. And that implies the technology to do it. And folks, we're being told in little dribs and drabs that some of that technology is there. So color me skeptical when we start hearing about the dangers of asteroid strikes, because there's another agenda. They want to go out, as we know, and mine those things. That means there's going to be a technology to grab and snag them, mine them, and then toss them away when they're done. And that implies some weaponization capabilities. So I'm extremely skeptical. I realize I've walked right off the end of the twig here, but in a world where increasingly we're seeing every little indication that these incidents occur in conjunction with drills, I'm beginning to get very worried when they start having asteroid drills and talking about planetary defense. These people are liars and killers, and they got away with the small stuff. Now, at least to me, you folks tell me, but at least to me, it looks like they're getting ready to scale things up a bit, and that should frighten everybody. Anyway, that's it. Don't forget to look at tomorrow's blog about some of this technology. It will, I hope, blow your mind as to what's been going on. Anyway, that's it for today's news and views. I'll see everybody on the flip side. Don't forget, there is no vid chat tomorrow. That will be next week. So I'll see everybody on the flip side. Bye-bye. Take it easy, and God bless everybody.